Top of the morning to you, Matt Waldman. Week 10 almost in the books. Monday night game still to come. If you're going to play Tyreek Hill, people be careful. He's a game time decision and all. I know this isn't a breaking news thing, so we won't break any news, but he might not play. You might want to have a fallback option in place. I'm Bob Harris. He's Matt Waldman. We're feeling and fucking things today, as we normally do on Monday morning after the game, trying to sort through some of our thoughts, emotions, feelings, and instant reactions to what we saw on the football field Sunday.
The kids are off from school right now. It's Veterans Day. No, wait a minute. They're not off from school today. It's Veterans Day.
I don't know.
No,
they don't
not.
bring me mail.
But people are off from work.
And by the way, shout out veterans. It is your day. And shout out to you. Appreciate all that you do and all that you've done and all that you will do. So, Matt, there's a lot going on this weekend. Man, it's just quickly, it's going to get tough for fantasy managers coming up. We've got more injuries, attrition, chicanery, general NFL script writing weirdness, all the officiating blunders and miscues, lack of LASIK. So, like, everyone needs LASIK, apparently. So, and on top of that all, I think we got a couple of 6-team bye weeks still to sort through. So, get ready for that, people. I think is it just 4 this week? 4, 11. It's weeks 12 and 14. We have the 16 bye. So, and they're good teams. But let's start out coming off the Sunday night football game. Wow, the script writers got one right there. That was phenomenal. Yeah, I'm not sure I had
down to the Dan Campbell at halftime. We're gonna do it a bit at a time. We got to start with getting a turnover.
Yeah, after they bit the kneecap, they got the turnover. So, great game, though. I mean, who had Jared Goff throwing 5 interceptions and still getting a win on their bingo card? I'm not sure. Resilience is the Lions' greatest strength, that it was the number one goal of Dan Campbell. Feel it or fuck it.
Oh, absolutely feeling that. And I think that this is a really good example of why really emotion plays into football. Because I think there's a lot of people who are in the analytics crowd who just want to divorce emotion as if it just doesn't exist in football, because you can't measure it by the means that they use to measure it. Whereas I think that people who are in that space, there are a lot of people in that space who understand that that is a component of it, and that there's always an unpredictable element to sport, and that they have to understand that football, being the physical game that it is, that if you don't have any emotions for getting punched in the mouth, then you're just psychotic, because that you're a sociopath, and football isn't filled with sociopaths.
You wouldn't talk about me like that.
Hey, it's all right. It's all right. You know, but I mean, there are some sociopaths, I'm sure, that probably play football, but you would be surprised to find out that probably it is not substantially higher than the rest of our population. Maybe more of the sociopaths are probably at the top of the food chain of NFL organizations, and that means they're not on the field, but they're probably more the ones who are owning the teams. And I would even say that based on what we've seen, most of them are just emotionally impulsive, so they probably aren't sociopaths anyway. But the point being this, Dan Campbell, you know, the whole biting kneecaps thing, and we're gonna play tough, and we're gonna tread water for as long as it takes until we can come in and drown them. That was the type of thing that was derided by a lot of the intellectual bullies of our football space, who just laughed it off. And what you're seeing is a team that was able to withstand a lot of tough losses early in their Dan Campbell's tenure, and continue to build. And when you look at the players that they got, David Montgomery, he's too slow, he's not good enough. You know, you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who there were 6 to 8 receivers drafted ahead of him in his draft, and he carries basically has a checklist that he reads every day of the receivers that were taken before him before every game. You have Jared Goff, who was deemed a puppet by Sean McVay, who was basically given the deal.
As unceremoniously run out of town as anybody in recent memory.
Exactly. Traded to the team that he wanted basically traded him to a team where the team loved Matthew Stafford for his toughness and his grit. And they're like, yeah, this kid, we just got him his loose change and lint in the pocket in part of the deal. And it turns out that, he's much better than people thought. The same way that he went, I think they won one game at Cal when he first got there, and basically took a Troy Aikman-style beating when he was at Cal, and then turned into being the number 1 overall pick in the draft. This is a resilient guy. And even though, he threw 5 interceptions, I think one was a Hail Mary, 2 were tipped passes. I think one of them was a bad pass in that game. So really the fact that he's able to withstand that, and while he wasn't the reason they won, he put them in good positions to be able to make plays. And this team, the fact that they played as well as they did, I mean, it is a credit to how they look. They're not down in any way. It's just like how the Houston Texans lost that playoff game after being up, multiple touchdowns to the Chiefs a few years ago, and when Damian Williams was the running back. So resilient teams win, and that's the key. And you have to understand that you have to be in control of your emotions and understand your emotions to be resilient. And I
feel this, Matt Waldman. Resilience is not an accident.
No.
And you look at teams out there, and you wonder how many teams. And you mentioned that opening press conference, for the introductory press conference for Dan Campbell, the biting kneecaps, which we all like to joke about, because man, it was like, look at this guy. I mean, like, it was really easy. Like, oh, sure, buddy. Like, go listen to some Metallica and get out of my. But the importance of the right coach and GM working together to build the kind of team that reflects what they are after is super important. So getting Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, for example, in Detroit has been the thing that turned, look, they went out and got great players, right? I mean, they've great players who that a lot of people didn't think were great. Correct.
Yeah.
So, and I would say we could turn that around last night. Like, for all the grief Nick Caserio got upon arrival in Houston, he hit on the right coach, in my estimation. I think D'Amico Ryans is like a guy that's. I feel like Houston, they might not be playing great in the moment or as great as we want them to, but they've turned things around. I think they've found that the guys that can run this into the future, and there are teams out there probably thinking, "Wow, wish we had Nick." Like Jaguars, maybe, I don't know. I could probably count 20 teams that wish they had this combination, but not all is well in Houston. And field or fuck it, CJ Stroud, the great example of how consistent pressure deteriorates quarterback play, even most good quarterbacks.
Oh, absolutely feeling that, because really when you look at, people could look at a lesser example and say Caleb Williams. Well, Caleb Williams maybe just wasn't that good. Maybe some of the old crotchety scouts just didn't get that right, or got that right when they said that he just wasn't all that good. But I would say that when you look at CJ Stroud, who's proven that he's actually capable of being good, when you watch recent games against the Vikings, the Packers, last week, I'm trying to remember who they played, I forgot, but
Jets.
The Jets, and then this
8
week,
sacks.
Yeah, exactly. When you get consistently pressured, it is going to force all but maybe the greatest quarterbacks into occasional bad decisions. Even 1 or 2 bad decisions can be enough to turn a game. And a good example of that was the hero ball throw that he made, that Carlton Davis III worked across from left to right of the field to cut off his downfield receiver late in that game. That was an example of a play that he should never have made, and he got baited into because of the constant pressure. He's had to do more work than he should be expected to, and eventually, when you're forced to have to account for more things than what your job really is, you're going to make mistakes, and that's what pressure does to you. And it also creates an emotional impulsivity, which again, we talk about resilience. If it at some point you need the rest of your team to be able to hold up or be able to show some of that too. And I think that
and when
Stroud's
you're
a one-man gang.
Right, when you're down some of your key receiving assets, Nico Collins didn't make it back last night, Stephon Diggs out, that adds to that, although Joe Mixon subtracts from all that. He's a very good player. Still, people don't feeling Joe Mixon all day long. You invoked the Caleb Williams name, so and I'm gonna bring up another Texans quarterback here. You mentioned great quarterbacks who struggle under pressure. David Carr totally agrees with you. So let's connect the dots here and say Caleb Williams sacked 38 times, the second most sacks for a rookie quarterback from weeks 1 through 10 since 1970. David Carr had 49 in 2002 ahead of him. David Carr, the bane of his existence was his backside touching the turf on such a regular basis. Are we heading in that direction with Caleb Williams? Is the CJ Stroud situation also Caleb Williams, except worse?
I would say that Caleb Williams, certainly there's cause for fear, but people are very short term in their views about everything, and I think right now,
come on, man, that's not true.
As you smile and laugh, yes, but I mean, here's the thing with Williams: could it go the Troy? Could it be a Derek Carr thing? Absolutely, or David Carr thing. Yeah, it could be that, or it could be a Troy Aikman type of thing, where the team does make it better. So it could be an Andrew Luck thing. It could be a Cam Newton or Russell Wilson thing. All those guys all took a lot of hits early on in their careers. And I think that with Williams, really they
worked out well for Andrew Luck.
It did. Yeah. But it worked out. Look at Russell Wilson's working out okay for him.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So I think that it's a factor to be concerned about, but it's not one to just write him off right away.
Oh yeah, feeling it right now though. I mean, we're anyone who's relying on a Bears wide receiver, or JJ Zacharyson pointed this out in his data dump this morning. Love this every Monday morning. Great thing. You should check it out, people. It's on his X feed, late round fantasy. The Bears haven't produced a top 20 performance at wide receiver since week 6. DJ Moore has only one of those top 20 games this year when he had 6 last year. So it is a ripple effect. Also, I would suggest this is further evidence that having the right coach GM combo might be helpful for some of these guys, or more helpful than maybe their current situations.
Definitely a stable ownership situation too has to start off, so.
Maybe wanting to spend some money at the top end too. I think that would be more. The Bears have the stable ownership, a little tight.
Maybe they're stable in that they're in power, that their power's in stability, but maybe they're a little unstable in terms of how to approach running an organization.
Steelers, Calvin Austin the third, Fielder fucking favorite, long time Fielder fucking favorite, was hurt late in the game. Mike Williams got some snaps. Boom, touchdown. Russell Wilson and Mike Williams. Are they the perfect match?
They are. I mean, really, that's why they got him, is that you have a physical receiver who can win in tight coverage, who can also occasionally get downfield and win those moon balls. So you have someone in addition to George Pickens, who can offer that. So now you're giving Wilson both of those guys and a Calvin Austin threat in the middle of the field who can work across it and catch the ball on the run and just tear through a defense. So as long as Austin is healthy enough to return in the coming weeks, you're going to have a really nice 3-receiver combination. Because if you notice, like Van Jefferson, watching him try and go up for a ball, he doesn't track the ball extraordinarily well on some of those deep plays. He had one in that game that I almost showed on Twitter because it was. But I felt like it was maybe a little too confusing to explain in that short period of time. But it was a bad tracking job. And I would say Mike Williams is an excellent ball tracker, very physical, would benefit extremely well from Wilson's loft on those throws. And when you have big, strong receivers like that who can come down with it, it makes it harder for defensive backs when you have a quarterback who knows how to throw it with that kind of touch. So, yeah, it's an absolutely perfect match. And I think the Steelers are, I think the Steelers are in really good shape this year.
It's because they have a great defense as well.
Yeah.
All right. So are they in great enough shape to be a Super Bowl dark horse? Be able to fuck it?
Yeah, I'm totally feeling that. I think that.
Man, some are Sigma Bloom, just like.
Yeah, listen.
Got a warm fuzzy.
And for all my friends here listening, I'm gonna say this. It was it was somebody posted a Twitter feed where that Swigman said, for all the mean and bad things I said and thought about Russell Wilson, I apologize. And I had a good laugh about that and retweeted it. And I would say, and somebody said, get him on your show so that he can, so you can drag him through the streets and have him, have the, the tour of him like making up for it. But seriously,
as a fan of nothing, except Matt Waldman. The great Matt Waldman. You can follow him on the X Machine at Matt Waldman.
It's not going to work. I'm going to embarrass you better.
Right. Like being a fan, like I'm a fan of no teams. I don't give a fuck, right? And I feel like I watch the self-loathing of fans, or the fans. Like there's nothing they hate more than the thing they love. Yeah. It's remarkable to me. I appreciate y'all. I realize y'all out there fans. But, man, when you watch from a non-fan perspective, you're all an odd bunch, man. An odd bunch.
Well, that's why then you must be odd about me if you're only a fan. So I know I'm loathed. There we go.
True.
So, hey, but I understand. But no, seriously, I think that they're not going to – I don't think they're going to beat the Ravens for the division. But it could be close. And I think they're the type of team – with their defense, their run game, the big plays and the passing game that they can get from Wilson, and Wilson's experience as a 2-time Super Bowl quarterback, and his experience coming back in games, this team could be the one that ends up being the Cinderella team that goes to the AFC Championship game and makes it tough for either the Chiefs, Bills, or Bengals. If the Bengals,
their coach is a cool customer. I think that's a big thing too.
Yeah.
It all comes full circle, people. Yeah. Talk about stable ownership. There you go. And stable franchise. A little bit of continuity goes a long way.
Best franchise in football, and I hate to say it, but it is. That's the best franchise in football.
Mike Tomlin, the third coach of the Steelers. I'm very old. Third coach I can remember. Joe Burrow. Feel it or fuck it, the best quarterback in the NFL right now.
I feel it. And there are a lot of guys you can make other arguments with, and I would totally validate the idea that those are worthwhile arguments. I would just say that when you watch Burrow, his placement, his ability to move in the pocket, his ability to work outside the pocket and throw on the run with placement, and his anticipation from the pocket to get people open, he sees the football field as well as anybody in the league right now. He may not be as athletically inclined as Josh Allen. He may not make the same otherworldly athletic throws as Patrick Mahomes, but from an intellectual anticipation, toughness standpoint, and the versatility in which he brings, I would be glad to be like, if we were building franchises and say I was fourth, he ended up being fourth or fifth on people's list, and I ended up having that fourth or fifth spot, I'd be dancing to get Joe Burrow as my first overall pick to build my franchise.
He's cool like a cucumber. I like that part too. Also, he has a great wide receiving asset. Has a couple of them. One's not playing, but Jamar Chase. JJ's dad had the top 6 wide receiver performances since 2011. Tyreek Hill in 2020, 57 fantasy points. Jamar Chase, 2021, 55. Jamar Chase in 2024, 55 last week. Will Fuller in 2019, Tyler Lockett in 2020, Jamar Chase in 2023, 52. That's top 6 since 2011. Chase is 3 of them. Is he the best wide receiver in the NFL? Somewhere Justin Jefferson fans, they're about to come at me with pitchforks and torches.
Well, they can stick those pitchforks and torches.
Not in me.
No, they can stick them up their hind parts, because I love Justin Jefferson. He's a great player, and if you want to argue that Justin Jefferson is number 1, I'm not going to go off about that. I think there's a very clear top 2 though, and it's Chase and Jefferson. I would give it to Chase just because when scouting these 2 players, I like Jefferson a lot pre-draft, but Chase to me was head and shoulders above everybody in that class, and really one of the best I've scouted ever. He is a better athlete than Jefferson. If you ask me, I think he's got more speed, more short-term burst. He's also more physical than Jefferson at the catch point. He's just as acrobatic. I think he's as good of a route runner also. it's splitting hairs. But if you're gonna give me all that and put them in a tier above everyone else, and you look at Chase's athletic ability too, size, strength, speed, to me it's easily Chase.
Is Malik Neighbors heading their way?
He could, yeah. He needs a quarterback who isn't so miserly with his dimes.
We'll talk about that. Danny Crimes. We'll talk about him too.
Yeah.
So
Danny Crimes.
I feel like sometimes when I get the questions, people, I realize that some of them are setups to attack me. This is one of those. Mark Andrews. There are lessons to be learned from Bob's overreaction of week 1. Feeling a fucking that.
I was actually attacking our own brethren at football, guys, more than I was you. But
so I'll just put a little context up. There was a point where I said it was okay to drop Mark Andrews because it was.
Yeah.
Because the position, but I put a caveat on it, and I want to say it was on the live stream about week 4 or so. Like, if you had to need it at another position or at that position that was being productive, and you could land them and it cost you Mark Andrews, yes, because you could probably go back and get him. I'll just put a little more context on it. Andrews was tight end 29 in week 6 through week 6.
Yeah.
He's tight end 20 through week 7. He has moved up into the top 10 now. I think he's tight end 8 right now. So I think, I think the overreaction was not an overreaction in my estimation. The overreaction was the persistence of the workload, and it wasn't until this week that he finally hit the 20% target share, first time all season. That had always been his superpower, right? Was like he was the best receiver on the team, or the top receiving asset. And I think Zay Flowers has usurped that from him, and that's been a big part of his problem.
Well, as you notice, folks, he didn't ask me whether I felt or fuck it, because he said, fuck you. I'm going to explain to you why you should feel it.
I think I nicely said fuck you.
I think you did. You did. I thought it was a very smooth way of going about it. And I think it's a great point. It really is that he is someone that you could have dropped and regained for weeks. And
so was the overreaction more to Isaiah Likely's huge week?
Yes. And I think that's where you kind of probably need to – that's a good lesson learned, because the film showed you very clearly that Mark Andrews was the decoy to – and it wasn't even really a decoy. They were running routes on the same side of the field where it just showed that the Chiefs and the other teams were more concerned about Andrews than they were, because he was running the deeper routes and he was the more heralded player, than they were concerned about Likely. And that's where much of his yardage came from, benefiting of teams really paying more gravitational pull towards the established stars. And I think really also with Andrews being the only game in town, a lot had that to do with Greg Roman's offense, which was really about not so much about the wide receivers and how we work with them unless they're working in the middle of the field. It was all about middle of the field throwing. And so I think now we're seeing that, Lamar Jackson's game expanded with the help of an offense that he wanted brought into town, an offensive coordinator he wanted brought into town who wasn't going to unnecessarily limit him. And that, as a result of that, Andrews saw short shrift early on. But, I think the biggest overreaction is look at the context of how Mark Andrews was being used or not being used, and that will help you determine whether or not he has a chance to return to a productive level. And I think that chance was always there.
I feel all that, and all my chicanery aside, generally we don't disagree. Like, I did feel there was a time where if you needed to move on from Andrews, you should. But if you didn't have to, you shouldn't, because he's still a very good player. And I think that's what people thought, like, oh, man, he can't play. No, that was never the case. And that was an overreaction at the time. So
yes.
So I felt that portion of your question.
Good
Matt.
Nuance and context there. I'm always fans of those things, Bob.
Yes. Jayden Daniels. Here we go again. Jayden Daniels entered this week's game against the Steelers as an MVP candidate. Did not have a great game. Wasn't great. I'm not going to lie. Completed 16 to 33 passes, 194 yards. Pittsburgh blitzed and got more pressure on him than usual. He's quarterback 6 for the year, but quarterback 10 in the last 3 weeks. His completion percentage is down from 68 to 58. Matt, are we feeling like defenses are figuring him out, or has this just been a bad run?
I think that it's a little bit of both. I don't think it's as reactionary as that defense is figuring out, but they are, and that his production is going to decline precipitously throughout the rest of the year. Though I think there's an elevated chance that it could happen if you see injuries along the Commanders' offensive line or that the receivers struggle, then that could happen. But I think what you're going to see is a slight dip. And some of that is that teams have done enough scouting that now they're starting to incorporate more into the framework to play against him. And it's forcing him to make maybe quicker throws than he'd like to make. The pressure's getting there a little faster. He's he's having to face some man coverage that may be a little bit more difficult in certain circumstances. And because he's going to have to act quicker and place it better than maybe he ever has before, you're going to see some missed throws in the game, and you're going to see teams pick up on what the past 3 weeks 3 other teams have been doing and go, okay, we can add that to our book and we'll try this. And that's usually what happens is gradually teams develop the book. And I'd say that the Steelers maybe got 2 or 3 pages from the book, added 2 to 3 pages into the book from what they saw the previous 2 weeks. And now the next few teams are going to start being able to do that. So I like him still, and he played well. But I'll add this, Bob. It is fun to troll you and say, do you know whose stats he looks exactly like after 9 games? Robert Griffin III. Almost exactly.
So I'll just say this. For this game in particular, not having Andrew Wiley, Fred Scott filled in pretty capably, I thought. At right tackle and got some help. They chipped in with the tight end a little bit as well. But I think, down a couple of starting offensive linemen, not having your top running back or, that could maybe grind the defense down a little bit were factors in this game. But yes, it was not a great game and all that. I hope you're happy with yourself now, Matt Waldman.
No, I feel that. I like Jayden Daniels. I do. But I am taking some joy in the fact that Bo Nix might actually be the most productive rookie quarterback in this class right now.
So let's go to that, because I think we can find a level of agreement here, sir, that we had not yet previously achieved in this Feel It or Fuck It episode. Bo Nix, the best rookie quarterback this year, Feel It or Fuck It.
I'm starting to think we might have to go there. I mean, we're getting pretty close. Listen, he helped drive his team down the field to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. He couldn't punch it in or get it close enough for them to score, and they certainly weren't able to. And he couldn't kick the field goal for them, but he put them in position. And from what I'm seeing of him, if he had a receiver who didn't clap attack everything like Cortland Sutton and actually made some of the tough catches that a number one receiver should make, and they could use Cortland Sutton as a good wide receiver too, this could be. People would probably be giving a lot more to Bo Nix right now because he'd probably be a 300-yard passer more often than what we're seeing.
Right.
But he's making good reads. The only thing that he did last week that I just watched is that he's a little bit prone to taking sacks from pressure up the middle, where he tries to. He doesn't really know how to maneuver that as well. It's off and on. There's certain types of interior pressure he's pretty good at, but if he gets caught in certain blitzes, he ends up taking sacks that he shouldn't and has no choice but to try and run and can't get the ball out soon enough. But I would say overall, he doesn't make a ton of mistakes, and that's the biggest thing with him.
So is there an argument here that like experience matters? Like, he had a lot of college games under his belt. Is that transferable, or to what degree is that transferable?
I would love to say it's important, and I had someone mention that argument with like Brock Purdy, him having 5 years as a starter,
right.
But at the same time, we've seen players who've had that amount, and it hasn't worked out for them. So I think it's probably more important that do they process information quickly? Do they have good pocket maneuvering? Can they place the ball and manage the game intelligently? And I would say that those things are more important. And, early in the season, there were things that he did that were mismanaging, and that had some of the quarterback coaches who were used to be quarterbacks saying, this is my big concern about Bo Nix. I'm not sure about him. And it's like, Yeah, but it's early in the season. Let these guys make some mistakes and see if they learn from them. And Bo Nix has learned from them, and what's shined throughout his young career thus far has been he's basically Mitchell Trubisky without the do kind of experiences that he has in between the 20s.
All right, so since we're talking about quarterbacks getting a chance, Trey Lance in Dallas. Will he get a shot during the final 4 to 6 weeks of the season and have some success, especially in games where he's not playing at home in the house that Jared built, where the curtains need to be drawn on a more regular basis? And Jerry says, fuck that.
I think he definitely gets a shot. I don't know how they do not. I think they had to go through using Cooper Rush early. But I think that it's going to be the Trey Lance show for at least the final 4 to 6 weeks. And I think we'll see some moments for success. Not enough for people to shut the door on saying that he's not a colossal bust. But I think that he'll show enough that there'll be some interest either from some teams outside of Dallas, or Jared will shut the curtains and Jared will shut the curtains, and when he opens them up and he dabs himself from the perspiration that was there, he'll anoint Trey Lance as the number 2 next year.
We'll see how all that goes, and not feeling a lot about the Cowboys going forward the rest of the season. Not be a great finish. Can you say the same though for Ricky Pearsall? Is he a fantasy asset moving forward? Feel it or fuck it?
Matchup wise, yes, I think he'll be a good match. They play the Rams, who can't play zone to save their lives, and Ricky Pearsall will probably have some good opportunities there. But I think that he's more of a matchup player against bad defenses than necessarily a start him every week type of guy, just because he had a good game this week against a bad another bad
unless
defense.
His name is Jawad Jennings, he's not the fantasy asset. That's the guy.
Yep,
Jawad Jennings. It's this offense. So should the 49ers split touches between Christian and McCaffrey and Jordan Mason? We had 13 of 15 carries go to McCaffrey in his first game back, suggesting something I've talked about often. Kyle Shanahan has said, I want to use Christian McCaffrey less. And my analogy is, I want to eat less cake, yet you put a plate of cake in front of me, I eat all the cake. Shanahan seems to do the same thing with McCaffrey. Hence, we get 338
I'm kind
touches.
of tempted to go travel to a certain area of the country and show up with a cake and see if this happens.
I'll eat that whole motherfucker.
Okay.
All right. So, Christian, should he be a little more prudent in his eating of the McCaffrey cake and split it up and have a slice of Jordan Mason as well?
Well, I thought the toothpaste is already out of the tube now because of what they did, but I was hoping that they would have eased McCaffrey in a little bit more, but apparently he was ready.
He was.
And he looked pretty good, but I think that Mason's still a viable option. This is the toughest thing is, do you take a player who's been playing really well in Jordan Mason, who's also a little banged up himself, and try and split time and create situations where neither player is really warmed up and in a groove, because you kind of want to give these guys a chance to be in a rhythm. Or do you do what you did and just insert McCaffrey in and say it's all over? I would say, as an old school running back guy, I'd say fuck that, give it to McCaffrey and let him work his way back into doing it. And they did what they needed to do.
Where the 49ers are at, they're 5-4 right now. They're in the thick of a divisional battle in a crappy division. All due respect, fans. More torches and pitchforks coming my way. But I think we're going to see a hell of a lot of Christian McCaffrey. And I thought when we saw, I thought the Bucs did a great job of bottling him up as a runner, but not as a receiver, and that's the extra portion you get. And we talk about it from a fantasy perspective. Literally, Christian McCaffrey is a player and a half. For our purposes, like last year, I want to say it was, over the field. I think it was running back 5 where he was the player and a half point.
Would you? I'll put it in the historical perspective for something you and I and people like you and I can understand. If Marshall Faulk came back from an injury and Steven Jackson was just starting into the league, he was maybe a year in, 2 years in, would you split time with them, or would you just give that ball to Marshall Faulk?
Give that ball to Marshall Faulk.
It's the same damn thing.
And apparently in New Orleans, when you don't have any receivers, we had Chris Olave on IR, Rashid Shaheed on IR. All you need is Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Came in first player since Brandon Cooks in 2016 to score 2 touchdowns and have more than 100 receiving yards in a half. He became only the second receiver to gain 100 yards versus the Falcons this year. Rashid Rice did in week 3. Marquez Valdez-Scantling and David Carr are a match made in Derek Carr are a match made in hell. I get my cars confused. So here's the thing.
It's not you, it's me.
I watch way too much NFL Network, and the David Carr defense of Derek is like always like in my face. So there we go. Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Derek Carr are a match made in hell.
Man, some people are just great at taking one for the team, I gotta say. But Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I'll say this. He's that guy. He's like catnip for people chasing fantasy points. Because you're going to make...
Get your waiver wires fired.
Exactly. Because you're looking at Rashid Shaheed and the way that he's used in the offense, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling has always been that type of player athletically. It's just he's got worse hands than Cortland Sutton or maybe Gabriel Davis. So if you're going to keep, if Derek Carr is going to keep throwing to him, see how I almost did it. If he's going to keep throwing to him, he'll probably make 1 out of 3 deep balls in a game. So if he gets targeted 3 or 4 times, you're at least going to get a puncher's chance at bye-week production. But if you're expecting him to be what he did last week against Atlanta, I'd say cut that by 50 to 55%, and that's more likely what you're going to
see. Manage the fab budget, kids.
Exactly.
Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills quarterback, the great Buffalo Bills quarterback, is not a good match for Dalton Kincaid. Feel it or fuck it.
My buddy Alex said this to me yesterday, and I started thinking about it and looking at a lot of the tape that I saw, and yeah, it's just he doesn't connect with Kincaid on certain routes. He either is hesitant to throw where he should throw it, or when he does, the placement's just shitty. And I don't think that Allen needs a player who... Allen needs players like a lot of his receivers are, like short, quick, can change direction quickly, and can kind of keep up with him, because there's a little bit of Kyler Murray and Josh Allen. Just not a whole lot of it, which is what makes him a great quarterback rather than makes Kyler Murray great every once in a while. By the way, Sigmund Bloom, everything you said about Russell Wilson is really what you should have applied to Kyler Murray.
Is Kyler Murray just fun-sized Josh Allen? Is that what you're saying?
I would say yes, except you're missing. That's just like you're missing a lot when you're, because you don't have the full-size thing. I think you're missing a lot inside, too, with that. I'm not a Kyler Murray fan, as we can all well know.
True.
But Kincaid, I think, would be... Imagine Dalton Kincaid with Joe Burrow in the Mike Gesicki role that we're seeing. I think that we would probably be seeing Dalton Kincaid as a top 5 option easily, probably top 3 option easily. So Kincaid's not awful with Josh Allen. There's just like you look at it and go, there's something missing here. It's just not clicking fully, and it could be, and it's frustrating.
All right, fair enough. He's the most targeted receiver on the roster heading into this week's game, so it's not like he's totally without some value there. Hurt his knee. We'll see what goes on with that, people. Could be risky for this coming week. So, same with Sam Laporta, by the way, in the Houston game. Yeah. That's a sprained shoulder. He might not be available against the Jaguars, that's a sin. Tight ends is not available against Jaguars. It's painful. Let's move on to the Colts.
You've been saving this for dessert, haven't you?
No, I have more for dessert.
Okay.
Joe Flacco became the first player in the past 5 seasons to throw a pick 6 on his team's first offensive play of the game yesterday. Joined Deshaun Watson in that distinction. Also the first player this season to throw an interception on each of the team's first 2 possessions of a game, en route to 3 interceptions. And so the Colts are now 1-3 with Flacco starting, including 0-2 since the official change. I was told that Joe Flacco gave the Colts the best chance to win, so great a chance to win that it was worth halting the development of one Anthony Richardson, and who is the long-term answer here, supposedly. Feel it or fuck it. Joe Flacco is giving the Colts a better chance of winning than Anthony Richardson. I said answering my question already.
Let me get my bib on so I can eat. Yeah, fuck that. Okay, I mean, first of all, when you look at this team, really, it's about this was all about optics. If you want a prettier looking stat line at the end of the day with a higher completion percentage, then Joe Flacco's going to give that to you. If you want bigger plays that might actually give you a chance at winning, Anthony Richardson is probably what the choice should be, especially if you focus on the fact that he will probably get better and better and better. Now, I think that Flacco, the best thing for this is maybe that they're giving Anthony a little bit of a break so that they can let him watch certain things that Flacco does well, just like Bryce Young got that break and seeing what Andy Dalton did well. But this is kind of that foolish thing that we see where we talk about, oh, when this event happens, what's going to end up happening is this going to make this situation so much more worse, and folks are going to suffer with that. When then you actually look at it and go, well, the situation that existed that everybody seemed to be happy about was still making people suffer. So are you really, I mean, I think that's it. It was the optics of that Flacco somehow was going to make this better as opposed to the reality.
Yeah, I think it's...
Completion percentage is an optical thing at this point.
We'll see how this plays out. Right. I mean, like everybody knows, when Anthony Richardson's playing, the completion percentage is not as important as the big plays that are being made. And when the big plays aren't being made, and nobody's happy.
And you're still getting sacked, and you're still throwing interceptions, and your guys are still dropping balls.
Right. And the rushing equity isn't coming through in the way that we expected. All those things are a problem. Speaking of rushing equity, Matt, according to Kyle Brandt and his mighty angry run scepter, Chuba Hubbard's very good. And he had 28 carries against the Giants, and the highest carry total of games since he had in college. And he looked fantastic, playing well. He signed a 4-year extension.
Who Kyle Brandt looked fantastic?
No, well, he always looks fantastic.
Okay, yeah,
very handsome man. If you checked his Twitter feed, so signing Chuba
Hubbard. I got a
Hubbard
sock for him, I think.
Chuba Hubbard gets a 4-year, $30+ million deal. I want to say this is feels like a great understatement. Would this be a red flag for Jonathan Brooks investors?
It could be, from the standpoint if you're expecting him to be, a top 5 back early out of the gate. But then again, when we look at the Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery situation,
that's exactly correct.
That's pretty nice. If you looked at Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb back in the day, they were both top 15 options. And I think that's eventually going to be the case. And if you look at this 4-year extension, actually it's a very friendly contract because there's going to be $165 million of dead cap by the time that contract matures in a couple of years. And this is going to be a drop in the bucket. And there's an out in 2 years. So really what you're seeing is that Jonathan Brooks isn't quite ready yet. So that could be a little bit of a concern on the standpoint of that they might say, hey, maybe he's not, maybe he won't get all the way back from where he was, and then that would be a colossal draft day mistake. But in terms of the 4-year extension, optics-wise, it looks bad. There's a 2-year out. The dead cap isn't all that bad after that 2-year out. Really, in the scheme of things, you can wind up with 2 good running backs, and Brooks, they're just giving him more time to really get ready, which I think is fantastic.
In a lost season, right? It's not like there should be a sense of urgency unless Dave Canales thinks his job is on the line, and it might be. I was going to go with the Priest Holmes Larry Johnson example, but people think I'm old enough already, so I think your examples are better.
I like the Priest Holmes Larry Johnson one though. That's a great one.
Right, I can remember Dick Vermeil saying, he's got to, we got to keep him in the diapers, talking about Larry Johnson.
Yeah, and Jonathan, and sometimes his behavior needed some diapers, or he needed a new passy. But Brooks ain't that guy.
He's a super interesting guy, man. He was way different than I expected him to be.
That's good because some of the stuff on the surface looked pretty bad.
Right,
but if you want to talk about angry runners, Kyle Brandt. This was an enraged runner. Jonathan Brooks, though, I would say he's not an angry runner. necessarily but he's an extremely smart runner, and he's got great contact balance. So we'll see Kyle warming up the pipes to talk about him in the future. But I think he's as good as Bijan and Jameer in terms of talent level.
Yeah, I think the Gibbs Montgomery example is fine. So if you've invested in Jonathan Brooks long term, people don't just say fuck it. Feel the love. Tyrone Tracy can't catch the damn ball. Is that why he was moved to running back at Purdue?
Hell yeah. I watched him at Iowa as a receiver, and I was like, yep, that's why they moved him at running back. And it's a good move, but at the same time, it wasn't all on him, though he did fumble a ball away that cost them some opportunities late in that game to seal it. And that drop pass certainly wasn't the greatest pass, but it hit him in the hands, and he clapped that sucker better than Cortland Sutton even could. So I would say that, yeah, Tyrone Tracy got some things to work on, but for the fact that he's 2 years into playing running back, and one of those years is in the NFL, pretty damn impressive thus far.
He's on schedule.
Yeah,
he's on schedule. Fine. Daniel Jones. Feel the fuck it, Matt. Daniel Jones is a fucking fraud.
I fucking feel that. I felt that
he's
on draft day.
He's exactly who he should be.
Yeah, but everybody, but if you listen to the Giants and when they drafted him, they got defrauded by Duke, which my wife would say as a North Carolina fan, and told me that I
fired.
Yeah, my wife basically, like, I'm going to tell you, Mrs. RSP, one day I have friends who went to Duke and graduated from Duke. I used to go hang out with them occasionally when I was in school. And I mentioned that, and she said, I'm just telling you right now, if we have a kid who decides they want to go to Duke, you're going to have to move out of here with them for them to be able to go, because no kid of mine's going to Duke. That's how much Duke's hated in this household. But I'll say this. Duke advertised the fact and marketed the fact that that Daniel Jones was coached by the same David Cutcliffe who coached the Mannings. And what an insider to the Duke organization before the draft was telling scouts who actually asked the deep enough questions was, no, David Cutcliffe isn't remotely involved on the level he was with the Mannings, and you'll see the difference in that, but we do market it to recruit people to get here. And so a lot of people thought, oh, Daniel Jones is a Cutcliffe disciple who got the best of it. And he didn't, and you could look at his tape, and the same damn things he does wrong in Duke are the same damn things he's doing wrong in
Matt Waldman hates Daniel Jones, hates Duke. I feel it.
I'm just a shill for Mrs. RSP on this one, but I'm definitely
and wisely so.
I hate that he was picked as early as he was. But I'm sure he's a lovely young man, but
I'm sure he's
miserly with his dimes.
Right. The results are speaking for themselves, and we'll see if there's a decision made.
I like Daniel Jones as much as Malik Neighbors likes Daniel Jones. I'll put it that way.
Daniel Dones, you mean?
Yeah.
All right. That's it. We felt it. We fucked it. It was fantastic. I'm Bob Harris. Find me on the Twitter machine.
I need a cigarette.
At Football Diehard. Follow him at Matt Waldman. You'll find links to all our work there, which we promote heavily on that platform. And if you're not on that platform, we're on others too. I don't know the names of all of them, but they're out there. Look them up. And find us at footballguys.com.
Blue Sky, Green Grass.
I'm on all
Red
those.
Sun.
I don't know how to get it. I don't know how the Blue Sky works.
I don't. Yeah, me neither. I got invited. Somebody asked me today if I was on Blue Sky.
I got an account a long time ago. I've never looked at it, but I set it up, and I don't know how it works yet. Yeah. So, and look, the Threads doesn't work for me either, people. I'm sorry. It's just it's confusing. So. You can find me on the X.
Yeah, you can find me on Threads. I'm mostly on the X, but I'll post some stuff on Threads where I can schedule it. It's just about scheduling more than anything. So, if you'd like to see me on another thing, I appreciate that, or us on another thing, I appreciate that. But X kind of works for me, and I've always tried to show people how you can filter it so that you can create the experience you want to have. And if you want suggestions about that, I can do that because, I'll just put it this way. I'm not, politically we can have a long discussion about all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, You know,
Fuck that.
I just want to talk about football more often than not, and when I don't, I'll talk to me and Adam will have a conversation.
Go listen to that.
Yeah, go listen to that.
Worth the effort.
Exactly.
All right, everybody, that's it. We'll see you next Monday when we'll be feeling more things and fucking some of them. Goodbye. Love you.
Love you too.